Okay, well, there's a couple things that I see a lot. My only real experience is with this Mirabay project that I'm playing with. And I go into a loop and there'll be 3 or 4 or 5 loops. So let's talk about when we're double siding our own transactions. Okay, so I'm the listing agent. I've got a listing loop set up, and my brother Jeff has a buyer and he sets up a loop for his buyer. Now we got 2 loops with the same address.
Well, we have to keep them separate, right? So there's a listing loop and there's a buying side, or the buyer side loop.
Okay.
Right? So we keep the documents separate, and you guys are different agents. You don't want to share your documents with other agents.
Right.
Unless you're both on the same side of the deal.
Right.
Sure. Unless you're double siding it, treat any agent like a co-broke agent.
Good answer.
Will be separate. Unless you are double siding it, treat each transaction like a different agent, like a different co-broke agent outside of our brokerage.
Perfect.
And if you're double siding it, then you're going to start with your listing loop and you're going to add a folder for your contract documents. So your listing documents and your contract documents are going to be in the same file.
When you double side.
When you double side it.
Right. So
okay.
In my situation where we had a house, we sold it, that deal fell apart. Then we created another loop for the next buyer. And now, then that's where it's just getting messy. So
use the same loop. We can just archive the folders within the overall file, right? So when a file is canceled, when a folder is canceled, when that contract is canceled, it gets archived and it's never deleted. Nothing in DotLoop is ever deleted. It's just moved out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. So we can go back and search archived and we can find the old documents if we need them. Okay, so that canceled transaction gets archived. Our listing documents are still intact. And then you add a new folder for the new contract.
And a big thing with this that I get a lot of questions on specifically is when you have a canceled contract, but your people are still in there because you auto-filled your docs to have those buyers, you auto-filled to have the buyer's agent. If that canceled contract is canceled and no longer happening and you're moving on, you're going to want to remove those people from your loop and put in your new buyers and new buyer's agent to autofill your documents and not have a problem where multiple buyers are showing up. I get that. That's probably one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, these are buyers from an old contract. Why are they here now? And I'm like, well, you still have them in your loop and they're still marked as a buyer. So you just need to go down to the people section, click the 3 dots next to their name and remove them.
So I do try when I'm canceling contracts, when you guys send in your release of contracts or cancellations, I do try to go in and remove the agents. So if we don't want this guy here, this buyer in the transaction any longer, that's the 3 dots Sammy was talking about. And this is a menu of options that you can choose from. And all the agents have access to this. And all you do is hit remove and then that buyer goes away.
And this is another important note because somebody has come to me with this, is that will you go to the view details people section?
Yes.
So
this is your main page, right? Where all of your documents are. So we've got the contract document, all the contract docs, and then you've got all your listing docs are down below. Okay, so that's the way we stack the folders. Listings first, then contracts, then paid at closing, then closings. All right, so those are the different folders within the overall file.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so view details.
There's also a people section here, but you don't have the option to edit them as easily as you do in the previous section.
On the first tab.
Yeah, so I've had people come to me and they're just so frustrated because they can't figure out how to remove somebody.
Right, see there's no remove option here.
Correct. So if you want to fill in the details of the people, you can do that here on a little bit of a bigger screen. But if you're wanting to remove, if you're wanting to add people to the team, the other section is much user friendly to do that.
It's quicker.
Yeah.
And this view details section is important because this is where all of your addresses are, right? This is how everything gets populated on your forms. So DotLoop they've added a couple of features. They have an option for a full address. And then of course the full address goes in place here. And then they've got it broken down to where, like on our contract deal sheets now, you'll see it's broken down by street number and street name. and then city, state, and zip. So there's a couple of different ways that they've got the forms set up. Out of my control, all I'm doing is filling in the blanks here, okay? I'm just warning you guys. If you see these things change, it's just because we're updating and being consistent on the backside, okay? On the back end of the transaction. And then you also have you can enter the street number and the street name by itself. So when you're first building your loop, your listing or your contract, your buyer side, you're going to get the option to fill in the address, and it's going to populate from Google Maps. So once you choose the address from Google Maps that you want it, that that's the property address that you're working on, all of this information populates for you. So you don't have to come back in and do it again, but you might need to clean it up a little bit.
Like, I noticed you don't have
because of abbreviations and stuff.
So I think the best practice we're talking about here is when you create your loop, spend the time filling in the people tab properly.
So I'm going to show you about that, because it's kind of important to get this right in the get-go. So say this is our contract that we're working on. We're going to add an addendum to the document, or a contract document, or whatever document that you're searching for. We've got our documents broken down by contracts, listings, addendums. These are the most frequently used documents that you're going to use, with your listings or your contracts. But just for the example, I'm going to populate a deal sheet, because there's lots of information on the deal sheets. So I want to show you guys what they look like. So when you copy this, or when you build your loop, and your document's going to be here, you're going to open your documents, right? So you would check all of these documents, and you want to autofill. So this is your loop is built. You've added your documents. You come in and you want to check off the documents that you want to work on. So we're just going to work on this one contract document, and this autofill is where this is the important tab. This is the content tab, we call it. So this is where you can add your buyers, your sellers, your agents, your loan officers, your title agent. All of these fields populate on your forms. Here's where you get the stickies with the addresses. So you can see it's the street number and the city, state, and zip. See how it's kind of broken out? You want to go ahead and fill in your MLS number, and you can put your detail in for your agents. Sorry,
real quick. I want to jump in and say something. Will you scroll back up a little bit just to that people section? So I get questions all the time if a list agent is going to be the seller, if a buyer's agent is going to be the buyer, if whatever the case may be. If there's a duplicate person, you don't have to add them in the loop twice. If the listing agent is also the buyer's agent, you don't have to add them in the loop twice. So like, let's say Andy Simmons is double siding her property. Andy Simmons is going to be in her listing loop as a listing agent, and she brings the buyer. She can keep herself in the loop just as is and change her role to buyer's agent and autofill the documents that way. So all she's doing is adding her role. So you don't have to have multiple emails. You don't have to double add yourself. Just change your role and it will change your autofill. So that is something I get asked a lot and I see a lot of is people doubling up entries. If there's a POA even, it's a little bit more complicated in those situations, but if it's one person, they have one email, you can put them in the loop once, you don't have to double up. That's something, it's a little bit more complicated than that with POAs and LLCs and stuff like that, but just ask if you have a question.
I want to comment on the LLC thing. The LLC has a managing member that controls and has the right to sell property. So we need the managing member of the LLC's email address and name associated with that LLC. Because I've seen it happen where we're having other people not eligible to sign a listing agreement use an email address for the LLC's name. So it looks like the LLC signed the listing agreement, but it's not the authorized person. We can't have that. When we put a listing on the MLS, we have to have a legitimate listing agreement, or we are subject to paying commissions to other brokers without any guarantee from the seller to pay us. So please be diligent with that. I'm just going to act like the dummy here just for fun, but you said change their role. So I'm looking at this, how do I change the role? I can't do it from this page.
So you wouldn't do it from this page, you would do it from the menu that we talked about previously. So this would be all done and said.
Let's
And
just go back and show them, Sam, while we're here. It's
So-
going to be down in your people section, underneath the list of all the documents. Okay, so this is where you can change. You go to the 3 dots, you go to edit, and you go to role. And this is where you can change your role. You can choose buying agent, listing agent, none. So if you want, so when Andy double sides and she's now on the buying side, actually she should really just leave everything in place. Just leave yourself as the listing agent. You don't need to update your role, but you can if you want to.
if you're
Okay.
using autofill.
What happens if Andy buys her own listing?
So
An
leave it. Just put it in there as one person. You cannot use duplicate email addresses. So
Just know
it's
you're gonna have funky issues with autofill. But as long as
you
you're
will
done-
have issues, but you can go and reassign those. You can reassign the autofill spots.
maybe that's what we should do next.
Okay. So one email address per person. So say this person is signing on behalf of an LLC. The name is going to be Jessica Beggins on behalf of, and the company name.
It's like,
So the
Signature 21.
entire signature line is going to be Jessica Beggins on behalf of 123 LLC.
the example I give listing people is if Craig was doing something on behalf of Century 21 Beggins Enterprises, he wouldn't sign the documents as Century 21 Beggins Enterprises. He would sign it as Craig Beggins, president of C21 blah blah. But what you can do is put the person in just as this, Jessica Beggins, put their email, and then all you have to do is update the first line of the listing agreement or the contract to have that full line to show that relationship. And then that way, when she signs in initials, it's just JB and it's not JBP of C21. It's some long initial line. That's something I see quite often as well.
Do you want me to show an example of that, Sam?
Yeah, you can.
So let's go back to this contract deal sheet that we added, and let's go back to the autofill.
Mhm.
I need to back up a screen. So now we're going to go back to the autofill. So we fill in all of our details here. Okay, so now,
It's on forever. So the more accurate this information is, the better it is. Phone
and all
number.
these yellow fields are the ones that populated for you. And I purposely don't have the effective date of the contract filled because honestly, I don't know what it is. I use the last date that I can find anybody has signed on a contract, whether it's a signature or an initial. That's the date I use for the effective date when we're loading in the data for the contracts. I wish I could just have a blank that says effective date and you could just write in there.
Right.
Can we make a request of the Florida Realtors Association, please?
You can't because it's the last date upon which last person signed, initialed, and delivered the document. And we
And I don't know when it's delivered, so I'm gonna leave this effective date blank. You guys, the agents, can fill this in. Otherwise, it's gonna be, when I'm looking at the contract and reviewing the docs, it's gonna be the last date that I can find a signature or an initial that has the date by it.
It may not be accurate because if it wasn't delivered on that day, then it doesn't count. So that's why we use it.
Doing the best I can.
Not talk about you, but talk the agent. That's why we use the critical date timeline to show an agreement of when the effective date is, because it is a questionable concept.
So the commissions are important, the MLS fees are important, who's paying the transaction fee is important, because if your client isn't paying, the agent is. So these are things that we want to know. We're not just putting it out there for fun.
Well, let me be a little stronger because I talk to Angelique a lot, and one of the biggest complaints she has is that you guys don't fill out your deal sheets.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, we're gonna have to just not hold their check until they turn their deal sheet in, and that's not, punishment is not a good solution here. Doing the
But
right.
when I'm completing the deal sheets, it's because I want to get on with the process because it affects our back office, it affects our title company with the escrow checks and stuff. So I'm just trying to start the process. It affects the hot sheets, it affects our production reports. So I'm starting the deal sheet, but I'm sending you guys a message in your .loop file through the Messenger app and letting you know that, hey, I've started this for you. Please take a look. It's important that you guys actually go and review your document, because what if we get all the way to closing and it's wrong?
Now, when you send a message through Messenger, are they getting it in their email, or how are they getting it?
They get an email notification. So if you
Log into DotLoop.
you don't have to log into .loop. No, you'll get an email notification to your BE account, or you'll see that this is the messenger icon in your file. This will be highlighted. It'll be turned on. It'll be orange. So if that'll be a mess, if this, you come into your file and you see that this is orange, there's a message in there waiting for you. Or we've responded to a message, but we haven't turned off the light yet. But you can go in and check your messages through this messaging icon. And then when we're reviewing files, say this contract deal sheet isn't completed, I'm going to come specifically to the contract deal sheet or the document that is needing a signature. I'm coming to the messaging icon next to the right of the document, and I'm putting a note here, and I'm saying to the agent, hey, we're missing signatures on page 11, line 42, and I hit send. And then you'll get an email notification that's titled the document name with the exact thing that needs to be corrected.
So that's important to note, because I always feel bad when I'm reviewing a file for listing or contract compliance, and I'm sending so many compliance notes, but that's why I do it, is because when I'm scrolling through the list of documents, I send a message off of each document that I'm referring to. You guys can see it a little bit more. And then also, so admin can go in and see, because I'm not the only one on contract compliance. So if Angela needs to go in and something's resubmitted, she can go and see why it was returned in the first place and check the document now that it's resubmitted for that item. So I know that sometimes I blow up your guys' emails with compliance notes, but there's a reason behind it.
And
Why don't we spend a little time and show them how to set it up right in the first place so we don't have to miss everything?
Yeah.
What is it? Prior proper planning yields positive results. So when you create the loop in the first place, you know if you're going to need an HOA rider, you know if you're going to need a condo rider, you know if you're going to need a lead-based paint, you know if you're going to need all this shit. So let's put it all into one thing. So we send it for signature. It's all done at one time, and that would make compliance a lot easier too.
well, everybody would be a lot happier. The clients would be happier. The agents would be happier. I mean, it takes a few minutes to set it up correctly from the beginning, but I promise it's going to save you guys a lot of headaches when it comes time to get your commission check.
So I'm seeing a couple messages in the chat that we can address. If we start a new loop, let's do it where we have 3 sellers and we have to add an initial box for that third seller. We can copy that. That's Devana's question. She said, can you please show how to copy signature or initial boxes to a contract? So we can go over that. And then another question that came in, it says, when adding buyer or seller in the autofill section, you can pick no one. However, it does not autofill no one. It autofills a signature for the buyer or seller. The agent has to go through every page of the signature line and change it to no one. If not changed by the agent, the buyer or seller will sign their name in a blank signature line because no one did not autofill.
Because our forms are formatted. Our forms in our templates under the document section, all of these forms are pre-formatted for you.
For buyer or seller. So even if no one is selected, it's still going to say seller sign here, buyer sign here. Unless you autofill it to Bob Buyer, it'll show buyer sell here. But that is something, that's more of a .loop back-end thing, how their documents are.
Well, why would we have no one as a buyer and no one as a seller? We wouldn't have a contract or a listing agreement.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the scenario would be there.
See how I clicked on this initial box and it says up here assigned to buyers? You can click on these boxes and you can reassign them if you need to. I wouldn't suggest that.
No. But you're right, you would have to go through.
Each line has to be touched. In each signature box and each initial, everything has to be touched. So I promise you it's easier. Leave the forms the way they are. If you need to add a signature, then I'm going to show you how to do that next. Let's go back. I don't want to mess up. These are our documents for the company, so I don't want to mess anything up. So I'm going to go to this is my you guys don't see this. I don't want to,
Yeah.
but I just want to show you this so I don't mess anything up in the company. But if you want to add, so you've got two buyers or two sellers. So the first sellers are here. They're loaded here. Maybe I should go to an example that's already filled in.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be easier.
It's easier to see it.
Right. Okay, so let's go. This is my test loop that I use all the time. So we've got our contract deal sheet and we've got two sellers, but there's a third seller. So what we're going to do is I would go to the people section first on this. So we're going to scroll down to under our list of documents and we're going to add our third seller. So see, I've got seller, seller, buyer, buyer. So let's go to add person and let's go to Cindy Lou seller, and she's going to be our seller number 3. We're going to go to the role. We're going to choose her role as seller. Wait, I got to get my box out of the way here. And we're going to choose her role as seller right here. We're going to give her an email address.
You're in the phone line.
What?
You're in the phone line. Like move up a line to the email.
Oh, sorry. Oh gosh, I'm nervous. I'm sorry. I like to be behind the scenes. I'm not good at this. So excuse me. Cindy, of course this will go nowhere, but I'm just going to use it as an example. Okay, so now we're going to add our third seller to the loop. So now see she's up here. Here's seller and here's seller. Okay.
So let's go to like the contract.
What?
Let's do it on the contract instead of the deal sheet since the contract has signatures on it.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've got our
an initial
sellers.
box on every page for that seller and an initial signature line on the
Yeah.
last page as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're just gonna copy that initial box so we don't have to do it every time.
Right.
Autofill. I'm going to go back to the autofill. Oh gosh, I don't know. Gotta get rid of this box. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the autofill and now see, I autofilled and our third seller appears in place.
And you just clicked overwrite, but that's important because it said it already has something here. Do you want to overwrite the information? And you want to because you want to add that third seller. So that's fine to overwrite it. Don't scare yourself.
Okay, but all you're doing is just updating the fields, right? So we want to include that seller number 3. So now what we do is down here at the bottom. So this box is assigned to Sam seller. This box is assigned to Sally seller.
A question we just got is, I made a mistake and added or assigned the wrong person. How do I remove it? So that's how you would do it. You would click on that box and change it to assign to and choose the correct person from this drop-down list.
Okay, so these are all the people associated with the contract.
That was just a question you wrote in.
Okay, so here's our first seller, here's our second seller. Then you go to add initials. Add the initials, assign field, come find your third seller, and this is done. Now to get this onto all the other pages of the contracts, you're going to use your hotkeys. So on all of the forms, on all of the documents, over here on the right, these are called hotkeys. So, and this is how you're going to copy this initial box so you don't have to redo it every single time the same way. So you're going to just click on it, see how it's highlighted, and you're going to do your Control-Shift-C for copy, and you're going to scroll down to your next page, and you're going to hit Control-Shift-V for paste, and you're going to click it. Now, if you hold the shift down, you don't have to do the Control-Shift. I do have to do it on this time. Now see, I held the shift down when I clicked, and then the signatures, they're following me. But I don't know how to do it. Oh, there we go. So I'm holding the shift down. Now I've lifted my shift up, and see how it's following me around just with my mouse now. So I click, add the signatures, come to the next page, hit the shift. Did it work? No.
I would say just do Control-Shift-V every time.
There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
So I just hit Control-Shift-V, click, click, click with the Shift key, and it's keeping the initials with me. Okay?
So let's just for fun, on the last one you do, let's change the roles. So one of Sam's seller is going to be the buyer or the box for the third seller. Does that make sense? Like we're going to change the roles.
Yeah, so see how the initial box is still following me? To get out of it, just hit the escape key, and then it'll release the command.
If you accidentally place one, click it again, and a little X will appear on the top, and that's how you remove it.
Remove filled.
So if you accidentally add an initial box, add something, add a checkbox, just click it, and you can remove it always.
And then this, you can move it around. You just click and hold on the mouse. Just click and hold with the mouse, and you can move this around if you need to get it into a different place. Okay? So now what do you want me to do, Sam? Or what are we doing?
Now click on the one that's for the third seller.
Okay.
So assign it to Sam's seller instead.
Gosh, how do I get this box out of the way? Assign it to the third seller?
No, the second one, Sam's seller.
Okay, so I clicked on the box, so it's highlighted. I come up here to my list of all of the people that are associated with this transaction, and I just scroll through the list, and I can reassign it. So now
it's the wrong person.
Now it's Sally seller. So my first seller is going to be initialing. See, Sam, see how this is changing? Sally seller. See how the initial boxes are changing?
So now, yeah, so that's how you change the people. Somebody wrote in and asked that, so I just wanted
Okay, but we want everybody to have their own signature box. So there you go. Okay.
Works for me.
Okay, what else are we supposed to, what else were we doing?
When I did my recorded contract last, you said I set up the loop wrong. Let's set up the loop the right way.
You did. But I'm not trying to, I want you to know, because you were adding steps that didn't need to be there. And that's all I wanted to point out.
No, show me.
Okay, so this is a brand new loop. Okay, we're going to start with a brand new listing. All right, so we're going to start back at our loops page. Do you guys know that you can change the grid view too? You can change the look of your screen too. And just by clicking here, so there's a list. I like the list view. If you guys want to use the grid view, by all means. And these filters are really important, you guys, because I'm sorry I got off track quick, but remember, these files are shared with the back office, with your clients, with other agents. So it's really, really important to be consistent. So when you see that we've gone in and we've updated a loop name, it's not because we don't like what you're doing. We're trying to be consistent with what already's been done for the past 3 or 4 years that we've been using DotLoop. So consistency is really important when there's so many hands in the pot. Okay, so please don't take offense if we change your loop name.
So somebody wrote in a question that I just saw, Regina. She said, what if you have a buyer, but you don't know an address yet? You just need a brokerage or relationship agreement signed before you go and show.
Yep, so what you would do is you would start a loop and use the buyer's name as your loop name. And then you go ahead and add your docs, whatever forms you're using. And then once that you come to an effective contract where all parties have signed, you know which properties the buyers are going to be choosing, you change the name of the loop to the property address. And then take it out of the buyer's names, put it into the property address that they're finally ending up with. And all of those other documents can stay in the file.
And
So
I get that
for your question, you can just create, and I create a loop in my system called personal. So it's just my personal loop. I put all my personal shit in there. If I looked it up right now, you see all these documents in there. So when you sent me that PDF to sign, I just put that PDF in my personal loop. Then I opened it up, I added a signature, and I signed it. And then I downloaded a copy of it and I sent it back to you. So a loop doesn't have to be the address. It could be any number of things you want.
Yeah, I have one of those set up for myself too in here because I have to sign forms for school when I was in school. And I didn't have a printer at the time. I didn't have a scanner. So I would put my form in DotLoop. I have a personal loop as well. And I would sign my docs and then send them back to school. So you can definitely do that. If you need a loop, just don't submit it to us, obviously. But you can have a loop in here to sign personal documents. You can have a loop in here to sign your kids' soccer forms, whatever you need. But don't submit it to us.
So sharing is for clients, submit for review is for the back office. So you're not going to share with the back office. All right. You're going to submit for review.
And that happens a lot on the listing side is people share it to us. And
yeah, same on the
it does
contract.
prompt us a notification. It makes it a little bit more difficult because then you click into it and it logs you out to, it's just a whole process. So if you can, remember, submit for review. It just takes a couple steps out of the admin.
Hang on a second. I'm sorry. Somebody's at my.
Okay, Sam, would you look at Darby's question? I think it's a good one.
Yes. How do you handle a loop when an agent from another office uses .loop 2? We end up with 2 loops. All right, so this still confuses me to this day, but I figured out a way. Basically, when a person is sending a loop, what they can do is they can pull in the address from Google Maps, or if they find your loop, they can tack onto it. So I don't have my screen shared right now, but basically when you start the loop and you're putting an offer on it, it will pull up from Google Maps, or it will say listed by so-and-so and have the MLS number. So if they're choosing that MLS number loop, they're choosing your loop and they're going to have a separate loop view and you're going to be a person in their loop, but you won't have full access to their loop. So it's kind of like a client view. They're only going to see what's shared to them. You're only going to see what's shared to you. And really what I say is when they have their own loop, copy the documents from that loop to your already existing listing loop and just create a new folder and use your existing listing loop for your documents and just copy them over. So when Ange gets back, we can show you how to copy documents to one loop to another. I think that will be a little bit more beneficial here because if you're trying to go back and forth between 2 loops, it's kind of nightmarish and it's hard to tell. But like, as you can see here, we put buyer side in parentheses. So that's something you could do to differentiate them for yourselves until you're ready to submit for a review. When another agent uses, so yeah, when they have their own loop, what I would say is copy the documents from their loop to your existing listing loop.
Well, show us how to do that, because that sounds really simple, but I'm in my head going, how do I copy those documents?
Well, now that Ange is back, she can walk you through it too. I just don't have a screen.
I think it's funny that you're calling your mother Ange and your father Craig.
Well, it's because I don't want to email people, oh, my dad says this. Like, that sounds so bratty. So you're Craig and Ange, sorry. Especially for people who might not like know the really, like if they're new to the company, I'm not gonna be like, oh, my dad. Anyways.
Lauren Fleischer, I let the PAs do this.
Yeah, Elizabeth and Chrissy, they're great. Barbara, Rachel, they're all great. And they do help with loop setup a lot. Mom's muted. Does she know?
Angelique, you're muted.
You're muted. We can't hear you. It looks like what you were saying was important. But...
No, we call them transaction coordinators because it's industry standard and it goes along with everything else that we're doing in our forms. And we've got like 8 transaction coordinators. Debbie's a transaction coordinator. Celeste is a transaction coordinator. So let's start calling them TCs.
All right. So the question was, how do you handle a loop when an agent from another office uses .loop 2 and we end up with 2 loops? So I was saying to copy the documents from the other loop to your existing listing loop and create your own folder and then use that to submit to the back office. I don't know if you have a different process for that. You might.
I do the same thing. There's different views. So you're seeing your view of your loop and you're seeing that other agent's loop, the documents that they shared with you. So you're seeing two views. So you want to merge them or you want to copy them like Sammy is saying.
Yeah, but
So, okay,
open-
so let's just go here.
And then Josephine Baker, she said, can you show us how to add a third line for the third buyer person signature? So we kind of went over that with the initials, and it's the same thing. Instead of choosing initials, you would choose signature and then paste it just like that. So if you want us to go back over that, let us know, or if you can go back and see that. We did touch on that a little bit.
Okay, yep, it's the same thing with what we did with those buyer's initials just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, from here, let's also show how to copy documents from one loop to another.
Super easy.
Right. And so I think that's the thing that will be important when you have another agent using DotLoop. They have their own loop. You're trying to use one loop. There is no way to get rid of their loop. You're going to unfortunately have to use two for a little bit as things are getting signed. But once things are signed, it'll be much easier. And yeah, copying documents will be your best friend.
I don't want to mess up Joe's loop. Okay, so let's copy this document into this folder.
Well, no, a new loop.
Oh, you want me to start from scratch?
Well, no, I'm saying, how do you, if this was the Keller Williams agent's loop and I'm trying to get their contract docs into my loop, how do I do that?
Okay, so say this is what you're seeing from the other agent, right? These are the docs that we need to get into your loop.
So the opposite. It's our listing. Keller Williams brought a buyer. They shared their buyer loop with us. And I want to put their buyer information in my loop under a contract folder.
Yeah. So you would just mark, if you mark the checkbox next to the folder name, it will check all the documents in the box and you don't have to go down that list. So that's what we recommend. And then if you don't want certain docs, you can just uncheck them. And then if you scroll up on the screen, you'll see the option has opened to make a copy. Keep going. There's just a lot of docs in this loop, so you have to keep going. But there you can choose make a copy. You'll copy as a DotLoop document to keep those signature places in line. To loop, and then you're going to search your loop that you want to copy them into. So this would be your existing listing loop. And the important thing here is that you will already have to have a folder set up in your loop to transfer them to, because it'll ask which folder you want to put them in. So if you already in your loop that you're copying the docs to set up a blank folder, you'll be set.
So that's what I do when I'm doing this on the listing side. Contract buyer docs.
Yeah. Lauren Fleckman says she has an example if we want to use it. And then Jessica said, the docs you would want to copy would be things like the seller's property disclosure that's already signed by the sellers, and an email list docs that you don't want downloaded that are already signed by the seller. So yeah, basically you're copying over those important, like, both signed documents. And then Sandy Tam said that she downloads them. And that's a viable option too. If you
download them and then re-upload them. It's either way works. You can copy them as a DotLoop document, or you can download them and then re-upload them to your file.
Yeah, whatever way works for you, whatever way is easier for you, go for it. But copying them will allow the DotLoop signature and initial boxes to still be clicked. You can still edit the documents. Once you download them, you'll lose that capability. But if you're already at that point where those documents are a PDF and you can't edit anyways, there's no harm in downloading again and re-uploading. And yeah, merging loops. Celeste just wrote in and said, I have merged loops, which is easy, but you have to make sure you're merging into the correct folder. And with merging, a lot of the times, the system won't let you. It'll say it'll ruin the experience of the viewer in the loop or something like that.
Of the person that you're sharing with. So the merge isn't always available to use.
But that is a very helpful tool. And if you want to know more about the merge system, if you ever think it's going to be necessary, just shoot me an email and I'll help you out. Because I don't think it's too widely used, so I don't want to dive and confuse people here. But
I like the idea of the copying.
Yeah.
Like Sammy's been talking about. So you would just check off your documents and then you're going to make a copy. And then you choose the loop. You want to leave it as a .loop document so everything stays in place. If you go here to flat PDF, you won't
be able to click in and edit anymore.
You're right, no editing, okay?
So you'll go to loops and then you'll just search the address.
And it'll come up, and
yeah,
when you open these, see how the folders are in here already ready for you to go?
So that's why it's important that you create that folder you want it to go to already.
So everything that we're copying.
Would it be a good practice every time I set up a loop as a listing to also put a contract folder loop in there? Does I'm gonna have one?
No, because you can just add it when the offer comes in.
What if it never comes in? Then you're just cluttering up your file.
I mean, people do that, and I just leave it because I know that's what they're doing, and I don't mind. But really, it's easy enough to just add the folder at the time that you get the contract. But if you want to be prepared, whatever you feel like doing, we're not going to stop you. But really, there's no need. But if you're proactive, you want to, get a head start, sure, go for it.
And the other thing I'm doing too now is when I built out the templates, we should go back to the starting from scratch a new loop, right, Sam?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Missed that earlier. Okay, so these are our contract documents. So I hit templates, the templates icon up here in the right. These are all the documents that are available to you guys. You're going to see these are a lot of the builder partners that we work with. And these, for instance, when we work with the same people over and over again, we just save the disclosures in a folder for them so they don't have to keep re-signing over and over again. And you guys all have access to these folders too. So if you're working with Scott Wheeler on a deal, you can come in here and you can add the documents that are already signed by him to your file without having to include these for his signature again.
And it's really mostly those three docs, the affiliated business, home warranty, and seller property disclosure. Those are the main docs that we copy over time and time again.
Yep, so you're adding these to your folders, to your files, right? When you're starting your loops, you're gonna add these and are already gonna be done. They're not gonna have to re-sign.
There will be an extra step where you will have to drag those into the placeholders in your loop. So when you start the loop, you will have an affiliated business placeholder that's required, and it will block you from submitting your loop.
Let's show them that, Sam.
Well, let's get through the setting up the loop part first.
That's
Okay.
That's an important thing that I get a lot of questions on is, well, I have the tax record in the loop, but it won't let me submit. So yeah, let's start a loop. Yeah.
And I also want to show everybody that we've got the loop templates already in place, right? You don't need to go pick. You don't need to go pick and choose what forms. You don't have to remember what forms go to a file because we've already got everything pre-built out for you. Okay, so your templates are in place for your listings.
Now you did away with the list with Beggins forms versus the Beggins Enterprises forms, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole nother ball game, and I don't want to get into that right now. But these are not live. This is my view. I'm working on building these forms out. These are not live. The Beggins agents won't see these, and neither will the BE3 agents. BE3 agents are using these for the temporary until I can get things worked out with DotLoop. Okay.
I want to do a residential contract. What template do I pick?
A residential let's start with a listing, and then we'll add a contract to the listing folder.
I want to talk on those added docs and submitting. And yeah, so let's just start a loop.
Okay, I'm going to start a loop. So to start a loop, you're going to go to here to add loop. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to put your property address. If, like we were talking about earlier, if you're working with a buyer and they don't have a property yet, just use the buyer's name. All right, but let's just use A property address. Somebody give me an address.
1802 Sterling Falls Court.
Who?
1802 Sterling Palms. Yep, right there. See, library used this address. This was my address in Brandon.
Okay, so
But that's important because you'll see other loops that have MLS numbers. Or you'll see from Illinois, you'll see from Colorado. Make sure you're choosing the right city, state, location. I haven't seen that be a problem yet, but that's something to point out.
okay, so this is going to pull from Google Maps. I'm going to hit continue. This is where I'm going to choose my loop template, right? So if I'm working on a listing and this is a residential listing, that's the template I'm going to pull, and all the documents are going to be in place for you.
No required documents. You might have other things you want to add that we're not aware of.
That's right. But this is the starting point.
So
So
I'm
you're
gonna,
gonna,
yeah.
you're going to pull the template that you want to use. So it's sorted by listing and the various property types, because the various property types have different forms, of course, right? Mobile homes versus commercial versus vacant land. And it's the same, built the same way with contracts.
Let's do a residential listing.
Okay, so I'm scrolling back up, and I'm going to the sorry.
Something else is
The listing,
if
and then
you're-
I'm hitting continue. You can skip the photo. We don't need to worry about the photos. And then we're going to create our loop. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to hit you're going to update your status, and you want to choose pre-listing. If you choose active, that means anybody who uses, out of the 30 million people that use DotLoop, can see your file, okay? So you don't want to choose active right from the start. You let us choose active when the listing is ready to go live on the market.
when we make your listing live, we change your loop status.
Yep, and I do the same thing on the contracts. If this was a contract, it's going to say pre-sale, before it goes under contract. And then when I'm working on the file and going through compliance and doing my data load in, that's when I change the status to under contract. And then it comes off, so it's not readily accessible to other people.
What do you mean all 30 million DotLoop users can see it?
So,
Remember when we were just choosing that from the drop-down menu?
Right?
and you saw the various addresses. If this was,
I can go into some file in Chicago and look at their contract docs?
Yep.
Well,
Yep.
you're not going to see anything, but you can see that it's an on-market listing.
right,
Oh,
You
okay.
won't see their documents because nothing's shared to you, but you can see the basic info.
right, the property address, and you'll be able, in the MLS number, so
Well,
you
but
can
Google Maps
link,
anyway, so-
you can link to that loop and get the docs that way. So, of course there's permissions.
Yeah.
I don't want, that's too much. I don't want to get into that right now. We're running out of time.
Yeah,
We can come back and do this again, but let's just start from scratch, listing residential loop, and we're going to choose pre-listing. You can go ahead and enter your list price here. That's fine. And there is no closing date. So you're going to go
view loop.
to view loop.
Now, something I want to touch on before we run out of time. The required docs versus optional docs. The required docs will hold your listing. Try to submit for review, Mom. Right off the bat, submitting for review, it's not going to work, but it's going to the listings. We have that pre-populated for you, so you don't have to worry about it. And click submit. So this pops up. So whenever you tell me that your loop, you can't submit and you don't know why, I know that you're being told why because this pops up every time and I know you don't read it. So please read it. 7 documents are required to submit. It's telling you listing deal sheet, listing agreement, residential seller, MLS, blah, 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 all these documents because they're required to submit, meaning they have to be touched to submit. It doesn't mean they need to be signed. If you auto-filled all these documents, it would satisfy the requirement and you can submit. It doesn't mean they need to be signed, completed before you submit. They just need to be at least started. And then, so that's why, like, okay, so also one other thing is seller's property disclosure is required. So let's say you go in to add a document and you want to use the non-occupancy disclosure. So go into add document. Let's find the non-occupancy disclosure. Seller's not perfect. So now what this is going to do is this will satisfy for us the property disclosure, but what it won't do is satisfy DotLoop. DotLoop doesn't know that that's the document in place of this. So it thinks that you still don't have the seller's property disclosure. All you need to do is drag the document, the seller's non-occupancy disclosure, on top of the required placeholder and click yes. And then all you need to do is rename that. You don't even need to rename it. I rename it all the time. But
see how the status of the document changed?
They're not submitted. So now let's go to add people and autofill real quick. So I show them what I mean when I say you don't have to have it done to submit. So let's add a seller. Yeah, give them just roll their, yeah, add person. So now let's scroll back up. Well, I guess add yourself as a listing agent, but it doesn't, yeah. Yeah, it doesn't matter. So
add to your team, that means you'll have access to everything in your file.
Mm-hmm. And I had this question yesterday. Randy and Courtney work together all the time. And Randy's had a couple instances where Courtney adds him to the loop, but Randy can't see the documents. And that just means that that extra step to add to the team wasn't taken. So if you're in the loop, everything should be there, but you're not seeing those documents, it's because nothing has been shared to you and you need to be added to the team. And if you are working with a co-agent, if you're working with a transaction coordinator, whoever, and add them to the team the first thing that you do, because if you don't and you add them later, you're going to have to send a team invite, and that might get lost in email, might lost in translation. A lot of people have trouble with that one. So add them to the team the first thing that you do, and that co-agent will see what they need to see right off the bat. You can work together. So that's just a little tangent there. But okay, so let's add person.
And you do not add anybody else to your team. You don't add your clients, your title people. Nobody gets added to the team except your co-agent.
I cancel team invites a lot. Sorry.
Me too. But you don't want to add to the team. Only the other agent that you're working with on the same side of the deal.
Yeah, never your co-broke agent.
Okay.
So see, it's sent. Yeah. Okay. Go back up now, and let's check that whole folder. And
I can check them individually, or I can check to the left of the folder name.
If you click open now from that top menu bar,
right,
it will open all of them together, and now autofill will pull all of those docs. So it'll say autofill. You got your Sally seller. You got your person in there. So
you want to spend the extra 3 minutes and just make sure everything's in there the first time.
Yes.
Yep. You can go ahead and add your dates in here.
So do that. Put in there so we can show that they fill on all the docs where they show. Just choose any date. It doesn't really matter.
I'm missing part of my screen. The
Zoom box.
Yeah, it's.
I've pushed mine to the side. I don't know.
You can go ahead and add your legal if you want to. You can copy and paste from your tax record. You can add bedrooms and baths. All of these things, these are options for you to fill in.
So this will start filling in your data form for you. Those 13 pages that are really annoying to fill out, autofill will take care of some of those for you.
Yep.
So your deal sheet will populate. And then your listing agreement will
39 fields have been filled. See this over here? So anything in yellow is going to be auto-populated for you. Anything that's not highlighted means that you are going to have to add the information in there.
Mm-hmm. So
Again, spend the extra couple of minutes and fill out everything on the autofill tab. It'll make your life a lot easier. It'll let you submit for review with all the required forms. It'll make Angelique's job a lot easier.
So when you scroll through, you'll see SAM sign here and then a line that says seller sign here. So the SAM line is assigned to your seller, and then there's no second seller, so that's just blank.
That's why it's unassigned.
And the seller could sign there. So if Sam seller wanted to come in here and sign it, it would let them. So I think that's what somebody was touching on earlier. That's just your client signing more than they need to. Just let them know, only sign where it's sent to you. So let's save this and then go out and look back at the documents list. Because you'll see now that just doing this has lifted that required restriction from you to submit. The only thing you will have to do is pull in the tax record, because the tax record you can't auto-populate, and it is a required document.
So I'm going to back out.
That's
and
the
I'm going
only
to go to our list of documents
from submitting, because if you scroll down now, you'll see not submitted, not submitted.
So say we've got to add, so let's just add the tax record. I'm going to go to add document. I've got this saved on my desktop. Sorry.
Yeah, you could browse.
Browse, and I'm going to go, and I've got this saved on my, I have a folder to process. Keep a folder, a working folder on your desktop. Just put your all of your files there that are coming and going, that are coming in and out of the files. So choose the file that you want to add. So I've just added a tax record, and I'm going to drag it on top of the tax record placeholder.
They're like, I have the tax record in my loop now, but it won't let me submit. So what she just did of pulling that into the required tax holder place is the key to being able to submit. So yes,
now
in there,
we can submit for review.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which tax record do I like? I prefer Hillsborough County Property Appraiser tax records. A lot of agents use IMAP. That's fine. Keep using IMAP. It's the same information most of the time. I just pull from the county, but most of the time the agent is submitting their IMAP report, which is perfectly fine.
Yes, Regina, you can pay $160 at closing for someone like Elizabeth or
Yeah.
another transaction coordinator to take this task so you can focus on leads and selling.
Yes.
As you've heard me say 1,000 times, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant.
It's really important to get to know how to use DotLoop, though. The TCs are great at what they do, but if you don't know what you're doing in DotLoop, you're just hurting yourself. So when I'm onboarding and bringing in people that are new to the company, their first few deals, I really think they should do them on their own, so they understand what's happening. They understand how to get around and navigate DotLoop. It's important. DotLoop and Zap, those are your primary platforms that everybody needs to know.
Because then you can also tell your transaction coordinator what needs to be done. You can still keep up and you won't be lost in the dark. Your transaction coordinators will be happy that you know what you're doing. You'll be happy you know what you're doing. So it is important to still get
and
somewhat.
you're the one communicating with your clients. So your clients may have trouble with signing, or something may come up, and you're going to want to be able to help your sellers get through the process. Although it's pretty point and click for the sellers. I mean, it takes them directly to where the next field is that they need to sign. But if they have questions, you want to be able to help. So it's important to understand the process.
Yeah, and Nancy said, plus you need to use it on the evenings and weekends, so you need to know it as the agent.
Okay, so does this...
Let me just add another thing I just want to talk. Jessica went to my dad's house over the weekend, and she was negotiating an offer. And by the time we got back to my house, it was done. We were in the pool, and Jessica's in the pool with her iPhone. I heard her, she put the seller on speaker. I heard the whole negotiation. She then opened her DotLoop app on her phone. She added a document. She made it an addendum. She wrote in what she wanted to. She added the signature. This is from her phone in the swimming pool.
Yeah.
In probably less than 5 minutes, the conversation had, the loop was done, and the confirmation that the seller got it and signed it was back in her notification. I mean, learning how to use this will just really make you a rock star. So, but it's going to take some effort. Angelique, why don't you touch on where some training stuff is real quick so they can see it?
Scroll down to the bottom of any page you're on in DotLoop.
Yep.
And it will take you to the Help Center.
See the Help Center?
And there's videos and tutorials and all kinds of stuff that you can do.
Yep. So it's all broken down by the type of person, you know, if your clients can even get
Yeah.
help if they need to. Okay.
So the bottom of any page in DotLoop will have your member ID and the help line number, that 188 DotLoop. And next to it is the member ID. So when you call, they'll ask for your member ID or you go to the Help Center.
See the member ID right here?
Yep.
Everybody has their own unique member ID. Down at the bottom of all the screens.
Sam, what is John saying?
If I don't change to no one, I've had a buyer sign twice on some forms. So that's what I was saying, is that it will autofill to Sam Seller. So click open the listing agreement again. So go down to the signature page.
There's two blocks. One says Sam Seller because she assigned a role to that one. The other one says Seller sign here because it doesn't have a name.
It won't prompt your client to sign the seller signature line. It will, when you share this to them, it will alert them to the Sam sign here, but they will have the option to click into seller sign here. And I've seen that happen multiple times. It's seller sign everywhere. They can. They don't. That's just more of a seller. You just have to tell them not to sign where they're not assigned to. That's really what it comes down to.
Or you could put no one there, if you wanted to.
Yeah, or you could take the time to go through those documents. Click seller sign here, Mom. Click that box and assign it to no one.
I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, you're fine. So click the box and you can assign it to no one. Now, while doing this, your seller can still sign there though. Now that it's assigned to no one, it means anyone can sign there. So there's really no foolproof way except to tell your client only to sign where they're designated to sign. Because
they should be led through the signing process.
And they will be led through the signing process, but that box will still be there for them to sign. And I see this a lot of the seller will sign in both spots. Yeah, no one is no one. Anyone will allow anyone. Okay, that's good to know. So if you choose no one, it will not let anyone sign there. If you choose anyone, it will let anyone. Okay, that makes sense. But yeah, it's really just telling your seller, hey, don't extra sign. I don't know if there's really a way to block that other than going through the documents and changing no one. Changing each initial and signature box to no one.
Cool. Well, guys, we got a lot of positive comments on this saying thank you for the training. This was great. I really think it was. We had 79 people online at one point.
We were kind of all over the place, but I hope we touched enough to make sense.
Yeah, I think
Should
we'll probably
finish this and get this property under contract?
We still got 63 people watching and we're recording too, so let's go and finish it.
Okay, so I'm going to add a folder. So say this listing is now going to contract. You're going to add
They need to review. Let's make sure. How often are you seeing things not being submitted for review?
A lot.
Not often. I don't see it very often because
Well, the thing that I see here,
I get an email that says help and then I go fix it.
Yeah, the thing that I see the most here is that they're adding their contract docs to the listing folder and submitting it to listings, which then makes me go in here. I add a new folder, I move those documents up, and I resubmit it to contracts. So it's fine. I just do that extra step for them. But
it's better to add your folder for your contact though.
Yeah.
And because the idea is to keep your listing docs separated from your contract docs. Because what if this contract cancels, falls apart, doesn't close? We can archive the contract docs, but our listing documents are still intact, still in place. So if you double-sided this, you don't need to bring your affiliated business disclosure up into the contract doc. Leave it down into the listing folder. and that you can make a copy if you need to, but
And
leave your listing documents intact.
Same thing with the addendum. Same thing, seller property disclosure. I see this all the time. Seller property disclosure, the addendums like HOA. What you guys are doing is from your listing folder, you're sending those out for signatures. And then the listing folder has no longer only a seller signed copy. So if that deal falls through, you're going to have to redo the seller property disclosure and have your seller sign it again because those buyer signatures have taken over the document. So when doing this, what the best thing to do is make a copy of those documents that you need the buyers to sign, move them up into the contract folder, share those ones for signature so your original one stays intact.
Wow, Sammy, that's sharp.
Well, because what I do when that happens and they do that, I go back to the MLS attachments in MLS, I download the document and put it back and I sort their folder out. So I'm doing that for you guys right now when I see it to correct it.
Well, I'll say it because people can't talk to you. I think
So now I just copied the property disclosure.
I think they're very appreciative of what you guys do in the back, but I think it'd also be very responsible for the agents to learn how to do this on their own the first time.
Yeah.
Then we can be a lot more efficient.
It solves a lot of problems down the road doing it the first time, because what would happen is that your seller would be mad that they now have to re-sign the seller property disclosure. Well, didn't I do that months ago? Yeah, well, now I have to have you re-sign it. So it just starts an easier path down your road.
Okay, so let's get moving here. So we got a listing loop set up.
And now,
Loop. Now we're going to add a contract loop.
and it's from a co-broke. Okay.
Right.
So if you go to add document and go to your templates and you scroll down a little bit, you're going to see co-broke contract template, co-broke contract template, our buyer, right? So if you have both sides, then you would choose this template. And when you do, all of the documents that we're going to be required that are going to be needed in the back office are going to be listed here for you. So again, you don't have to go hunt. Let's just do it so it's not our buyer. This is just what we're going to, and these are the documents here. So you that we're going to be required on the buying side. Co-broke contract template, select all. Now we're going to bring the placeholders into the loop. So now you know you've got to get these documents in order to get this put together correctly. So we've already added our seller's property disclosure. So I'm going to drag and drop it in place over the placeholder. Now I'm going to get my contract. So remember, if you're copying documents from a file already in DotLoop from another agent, this is where you're going to copy them to. You're going to drag and drop your contract in place.
Yeah, so if the agent's from 1962 and they send you a handwritten contract and they PDF it to you in an email.
There's three ways to add documents. You go to add document. You can add the template like I just did, right? Where I put the placeholders in place. You can go to browse and you can search on your computer to where the file, where you're storing your files, or you can go to email. And if they've sent it to you in an email, you copy this big long email and you go to your email and you go to the email where the attachment is. So say there's an attachment here, you just hit forward, put the email in place and hit send.
And what's important there is there needs to be an attachment. So
yeah,
like,
let me talk about that because I was an idiot. I had this note that I wanted to put in the file and I emailed it in and
he emailed me and he's like, it's not working.
It's not working. So what you have to do is you have to make a PDF of the email and then attach it to the email and send it in to yourself.
Yeah.
Yep. So you can do that too. So what if, so
if you know how to create a PDF, show
file, this is your email that you want to put in a file. You
Right.
come to your three dots, your menu, you open your menu, you hit print, you save this to a PDF.
So choose your printer.
As save as PDF.
Destination might be, HP, Canon, whatever it is. Scroll down, you'll have a save as PDF button.
And
So
this,
these are,
anytime that somebody emails in a price change, anytime somebody emails in a note to me that I'm adding to the file, this is how I'm getting it into the file.
So you can't email, the text of an email does not go into the loop. You have to print it as a PDF and then attach it and email it into the loop.
Right. So you
And you know,
just take that.
before you get off this topic, I want you to think about this. Your seller or buyer should be taught to use this for their home ownership going forward. This is their loop. So when they buy a new refrigerator, they can PDF the invoice and put it in their loop, and they'll have a record of when they bought the refrigerator. If they put a fence in, they can scan a copy of the fence invoice and put it into their loop. This is their home management folder. And that's why I think about it. Every time they go into it, they're going to think about you. So educate them along the way. That's one of the subtle advantages of DotLoop most people don't talk about. But, and now you know, you can just print the PDF, or you can scan and create a PDF and put it in the loop and show them how to do that. And it'll be a very nice customer
Add
service.
your surveys, your appraisals, all your inspection reports. Those can all be added to your contract files.
Just because they're not needed for file doesn't mean you can't keep them in there. So any extra docs, put them in there and we just approve them for you. There's no, it won't hold up your file. But something else that I want to touch on that Celeste just mentioned is that I add MLS attachment at the beginning of the document name. So let's pull in a HOA addendum to that listing folder. So when you're needing extra documents, if you have a lead paint home, if you have a home that has a CDD in it, you're going to go to addendums. You're going to find whichever ones you want. And also agents a lot of the time have the feature sheets that they want in MLS. They have list of how to submit an offer, whatever it is, whatever documents you want in MLS attachments. Note that, yeah, elevation certificates, exactly. Upload that to your loop. Just title it MLS or title it some way that we know that you're wanting that put in MLS. I've gotten pretty good at judging what you guys do and do not want, and if I question it, I message you and ask you. I'm like, hey, I'm not sure. Do you want this in as an MLS attachment? Let me know. So to rename a document, you can click into the name in the top when you're in the document. Or, yeah, so click into the lead paint right there and just type in MLS in front of it. Something as simple as that lets me know, hey, I want this in MLS as an attachment. Now, with any addendums, I'm going to know right off the bat to put them in there. But if you have those elevation certificates, if you have flooded, whatever you have extra, that's not, yeah, if you have anything extra, just let me know. So then that way it's smooth sailing. I don't have to ask you. And it just makes it easier for everyone.
You can also rename the documents using the pull down menu over here.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would rename it as just MLS attachment, lead paint. So I'm sure everyone who has a listing has seen me rename things. And it's not that you're naming things incorrectly. It's just what Ange said earlier about consistency. So that's really it. Just pull in those extra documents you need. Just and a lot of the times they'll note on the deal sheet what they want attached, or they'll email and say attach these, and that's perfectly fine too. As long as we're not leaving anything off for you, that's my only goal, is that I want your listing to be exactly what you want it to be. I want everything to be there, and that's just as an extra step. And then that way you can see what's been added to MLS, what's not been added. That kind of clarifies any questions there.
Cool. Well, I want to say thank you on behalf of the team for all the work you guys do, because I know you're doing a lot more than they know you're doing. And so my goal is for us to show them how to make your life easier too, and be more efficient at their job, because competence and confidence go hand in hand. Right. And watching my daughter in the pool on her iPhone creating an addendum in 4 minutes and having it signed back and notified, it's just really a pretty impressive way to do business. So once again, help centers at the bottom. There's lots of self-education here. And yes, Mom, thank you.
Yeah.
See, I call my mom, but
yeah, somebody else, I think it was Deb Haley. She's like, you call your mom Vicky.
no, I don't. I call her Mom.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Well,
Well,
we can do this again.
Yeah, we will do this a lot more.
Write in your questions, send me questions if anyone has them, and we'll save them for next time. And that's what we'll go off of. I don't know.
Cool.
Worked for me.
All right. Mr. Puma, you can end this meeting for us if you'd like. Because Mike has us are streaming live on YouTube, so the whole world can see us right now.
That's
Oh,
not good.
great.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.